Back here on HQ Spotlight, and we're talking about NFL free agents that could get overpaid. And quarterback Malik Willis is at the top of that list in a lot of these conversations. He was drafted by the Tennessee Titans in the third round of the 2022 draft. He spent two pretty serviceable seasons with the Packers as Jordan Love's backup, and kind of a wild card in this free agent class because he only has 6 career starts, but with the upside, we're thinking of that. We've been hearing figures and deals that could be out there for $20 to $30 million per year. And if you are desperate for a quarterback, that is the type of money you got to pay if you're a team. So let's welcome in Mike Renner and JP Acosta as we discuss free agents that could get overpaid. And JP, of course, we are starting with quarterback Malik Willis.
The biggest thing with Malik Willis for me is he has played quite well over the last couple of seasons, but he's only played in 11 games in those 2 seasons. And when he does play for the Packers, they have a 27% neutral pass rate for Malik Willis. That would be the lowest in the NFL this past year, even lower than the New York Jets, who actively tried to not throw the football. There is just such a limited amount of real drop back situations from Malik Willis to show that he is a quarterback worth more than $30 million a year, which is what he's asking. But it feels like he's going to get that because not only is this free agent class sort of iffy outside of Willis, but the draft class this year, outside of Fernando Mendoza, there aren't a lot of guys who you want to really put your trust in to go start NFL games this year. So I think Malik Willis is going to get that $30 million or more that he's been asking for, but I would have a little bit of buyer beware.
JP, I'll just put my hand up. I would be one of those guys overpaying for Malik Willis. If I was an NFL GM and I was desperate for a quarterback and I obviously didn't have the #1 overall pick, he would be my first option because it depends so much on what you thought of Malik Willis coming out of college. I really liked his game at Liberty. I thought there were a lot of positives. He has insanely high-end tools. He just needed development. Well, through 4 seasons, it looks like he got a lot of that development. Now, there's still some rough around the edges, and he hasn't played a ton of football. But for his contract and what it's going to be, it's still going to be $20 to $30 million less than the top end guys in the NFL. So if you can just get a competent starter out of him, I think it'll end up looking, or could end up looking, like the Sam Darnold deal, which looks like a steal now.
All right, and spoiler alert, in this segment, we are talking about quite a few Green Bay Packers. So, Mike, who else falls into that category that could be overpaid?
Yeah, I think linebacker Quay Walker is just rife with a lot of things that make me think he's going to be overpaid. 1 is that he's a high-end athlete. 2 is that he's a former first-round pick. 3 is that he had a lot of tackles this season, 128 to be exact. So those 3 things, it seems like usually the former first-round tag at linebacker bumps up your salary a little bit. I just watch him over his career, though, in Green Bay, and I see a guy who is too much of a liability in coverage for me to sign and give that much money to and think he'll turn it around, turn my defense around. And the biggest thing is just the lapses, the mental lapses you see on his tape. 548 yards allowed in coverage this year, according to PFF. That was second most among all Packers defenders. And he only has 1 pick in 4 seasons. He's really not a playmaker in coverage in that sort of mold that Devin Lloyd is, who's hitting free agency as well.
I actually think that I would pay Quay Walker, and I think it's because of the high-end tools athletically, but also being a former first-round pick, and he's an effective blitzer. If you're going to have a linebacker that you're going to pay a lot of money, you have to affect the game either as in pass coverage or as a blitzer. And I think for Quay Walker, because he affects the game so much as a blitzer and a QB spy, I think teams like Washington, the Commanders, who are bringing sort of that Brian Flores style of defense to Washington, I think having a guy like Quay Walker that can wear multiple hats on that defense, I think that'd be a really nice fit for them, especially if they get sort of priced out of the Devin Lloyd range. But I actually think Quay Walker, in the right defense, he could be a pretty nice player.
I like how both of the guys that we've talked about so far, someone has been like, I would actually pay either Quay Walker or Malik Willis. I don't think it's overpaying. We're going to stick with the Green Bay Packers theme. Rasheed Walker, JP, is that someone that you would pay?
Yeah, I don't know if I would pay Rasheed Walker as much money as he's going to get. He has a 32% pressure and beat rate according to True Media. That is one of the highest in the NFL for guys who are high-volume pass protectors. And he also had a 6.4% pressure rate per dropback, which, again, is really high for a guy who played the same amount of volume that he has, over 750 snaps at left tackle. He's going to get a lot of money because this free agent class just isn't that great at left tackle, and this draft class might have a lot of question marks at left tackle. But this feels really similar to Dan Moore's deal last season with the Tennessee Titans. He got over $20 million, and then he was third in the NFL in pressure rate allowed. So this feels very similar to that. I don't know if I could put as much faith in Rasheed Walker as my left tackle of the future and pay him more than $20 million.
Yeah, I'm not putting any hands up here. I would not want him either. Truthfully, I didn't even think he should have been starting last year for the Green Bay Packers. I don't think he was one of their best five. But as JP said, he's the best left tackle on the market. Cam Robinson's your only other starter at left tackle from last season, hitting the market. And a lot of teams have tried that. A lot of teams have regretted trying that at this point. So if you need one that can even be capable of starting, it's him. So it does feel like he's going to get that Dan Moore deal just because desperation wins out.
And JP, I know you feel my pain for this next guy because I know Etienne is kind of polarizing amongst, Duval fans, but I'm 10 toes down. I love him. I'm sick of talking about him going to another team. But Mike, it's not often we talk about a running back that's going to be getting overpaid. But Etienne, what are your thoughts on him potentially being overpaid here in free agency?
Is kind of the running back version of Quay Walker here, in that he was a former first rounder who has flashed at times. This past season, one of his best. Obviously, his rookie season was great, but he's just been so inconsistent over the course of his career. Going to a running scheme that won't be as favorable as what Liam Cohen brings to the table, I worry about his effectiveness. He's just not a great between the tackles sort of runner. He's much more of a space back. But unlike a lot of good space backs, he doesn't have great hands. He's not a great receiver of the football. So you can't use him a ton in that manner and think you're going to get a great player. He has a 7.7% career drop rate, which is really high for a running back. So for all those reasons, I think someone's going to give him somewhere in the neighborhood of $10+ million, but you're going to get a guy who's somewhat inconsistent over the course of his career.
I actually think that Travis Etienne could come in at around a sort of similar deal to Javonte Williams, the extension he just got in Dallas, which is around $8 million a year. And if he comes in that $8 to $10 million range, I actually think it's pretty nice value. While Mike said that, yeah, he is not that great of a pass catcher, and he's dealt with some injuries, I do think he has the ability to be explosive as a runner, especially outside of the tackles. And if you're going to get a guy around $8 to $10 million a year, especially if you can stay around that $8 million range, that's around guys like Chuba Hubbard, David Montgomery is making $9 million a year. Ramondre Stevenson is at that same range. Aaron Jones was making $10 million with the Vikings. It just feels like if you can get Travis Etienne in that range, which I think he's going to come in at, I think that's a pretty nice deal.
All right, JP, we're talking about Chaisson. So why is he somebody that could be overpaid?
I just think with Chaisson, he is a productive pass rusher who should be more of a situational player than a full-time guy. I think he's going to get the amount of money that's going to require him to play a lot of snaps on early downs, where I just think his effectiveness is just very limited as a run defender. I think he's a little slim. I think he's a little slender. That's always been his issue, especially after leaving the draft, after leaving LSU. There was his issue with the Jaguars, and he sort of came on as a pass rusher in designated pass situations for the Patriots, but I just worry that a team is going to give him double-digit $1 million per year to be a real focal point of a pass rush while also being an edge setter in the run game, and that's just not his style of play. So I just hope that he doesn't get that amount of money just to make sure that he stays in his true best form as a designated pass rusher.
All right, finally, we are going to Chicago. So who there that's slated to be a free agent could be overpaid, Mike?
I think it's cornerback Chaisson Wright, the guy who led all cornerbacks in picks last year. And I hope he gets his money, right? Last chance you guy revived his career. Awesome to see there in Chicago. But he has a buyer beware tag in that he is the most boom or bust corner in this free agent class. Those picks, those pass breakups, yes. But he also allowed the 5th most yards of any cornerback. In today's NFL, with how teams are playing defenses, you kind of want guys who are more steady, more consistent down to down than what I saw from Chaisson Wright. So he could command upwards of $15 million a year. And if he does, I think you're just getting a high risk, high reward sort of guy.
JP, Mike, we certainly appreciate it as the NFL free agency talk continues. And a reminder, you can hear the guys on Pushing the Pile in the very latest episode. Renner and JP giving their favorite free agency fits as we approach the opening of the tampering window next week. You can watch the episode right now by scanning that QR code on your screen.